Some connections in life feel as if they were inscribed in the stars long before we arrived here. Encounters so intense, so charged with meaning, that we're tempted to call them fate. They sweep into our lives with the force of inevitability, making us believe that the universe itself brought two souls together in perfect harmony. But what do we do when that same universe, once seemingly in favor of the bond, begins to shift? When subtle signs like whispered warnings carried on the wind begin to emerge? When synchronicities turn from affirmations to gentle alarms, signaling that perhaps this love, however powerful it may feel, is not in alignment with our soul's deeper journey? This video invites you to truly listen, not with your ears, but with your intuition, to those quiet and often painful nudges that suggest your relationship may be out of sync with your path of inner growth and self-realization. We will explore how the universe, in its silent and timeless wisdom, mirrors the hidden truths of our soul, and how it gently but persistently urges us to see what we often resist. If you've ever felt that love should feel lighter, more free, more sincere, and more aligned with the person you are becoming, then this message is for you. At the end of the video, type the phrase, "I choose the love that sets me free," in the comments. That simple declaration could be your first conscious step toward a new and liberating chapter. In Carl Jung's analytical psychology, every relationship is essentially a dynamic encounter between two evolving psyches. When we speak of signs from the universe suggesting two people are not meant to remain together, what we are truly referring to are unconscious messages breaking through the surface. Messages that take form in symbols, synchronicities, and recurring patterns. These are not coincidences but sacred hints, the soul's language. Jung believed that in the early stages of love, we unconsciously project onto the other person the disowned parts of ourselves, traits, wounds, desires or longings we have yet to face. This act of projection can be mesmerizing. It feels as if we've found someone who completes our emotional landscape, someone who fills a gap we didn't even know existed. But over time, these projections begin to fade. What was once captivating becomes confrontational. The illusion starts to peel away, revealing incompatibilities that had always been there, waiting patiently beneath the surface. And this is not a failure. It is an invitation, a summons to the process of individuation, the deep, personal journey back to our own essence. It is a call to reclaim what we gave away unconsciously, to retrieve our unmet needs, our lost wholeness, and to stop placing them in the hands of someone else. Another crucial Jungian concept, the shadow, emerges strongly in troubled or imbalanced relationships. We are often magnetically drawn to those who reflect the very things we deny in ourselves, the pain we've buried, the fears we avoid, the shame we carry, the desires we have repressed. When the relationship becomes a mirror of our fragmentation, the universe starts to send louder signals that the cycle is coming to an end. These signals are not punishments. They are sacred opportunities, invitations to integrate our inner masculine and feminine, the animus and anima, and to discover within ourselves the completeness we keep seeking in another. Once we begin to understand this, we stop resisting the natural movement of life. We stop clinging to something that feels familiar but stifling. We begin, instead, to listen to what our soul has been trying to tell us all along. Because the universe speaks, not in words, but in energy, in feeling, in flow. And what it desires most is for us to become whole. When we enter a truly intense relationship, one that shakes the ground beneath our feet, it's almost inevitable that parts of us, long buried, long forgotten, begin to surface. The other person becomes a mirror, more powerful than any reflection we've ever faced, showing us not only the light we carry, but also the darker corners of our psyche. the fears, insecurities, and wounds we've tried so hard to keep hidden. And when that mirror becomes too sharp, too confronting, when the reflections start to wound more than soothe, the universe begins to speak. It doesn't shout. It whispers repeatedly through emotional patterns, recurring conflicts, and that haunting sense of déjà vu. These aren't just typical disagreements. They're symptoms of something deeper stirring in the unconscious, content that is unresolved, unprocessed, and demanding our attention. You might find yourself trapped in cycles, constant jealousy, a persistent fear of being abandoned, a compulsive need to control, or a gnawing difficulty trusting the person you love. These are not flaws in the other, but signals, cries from the shadow self echoing through the cracks in the relationship. They are messages disguised as discomfort, begging for integration. Imagine someone who continually ends up in relationships where they feel unseen, unheard, as if they are invisible. On the surface, it looks like bad luck, like poor choices. But underneath, there's a deeper narrative unfolding, perhaps a story of not feeling valued as a child, of being overlooked, of love being conditional. Jung would not ask us to fix the other person, but instead to ask, why do I keep ending up here? What is this pattern revealing about my own story? The relationship becomes less of a romance and more of a sacred crucible, a place where the soul is tested, refined, and ultimately transformed. The universe in these moments plays the role of a silent sage. It doesn't interfere with force. Instead, it orchestrates small alchemical events, moments of clarity, emotional echoes, subtle symbols in dreams or day-to-day life. These are invitations, not punishments. Invitations to look where we've avoided looking, to touch what we've numbed ourselves against. The relationships that don't last, especially those that leave emotional scars, are often the ones that awaken our deepest shadows. These intense bonds, though short-lived, have a strange way of illuminating what's been repressed. The love feels real, but it's tangled with pain. Arguments repeat like broken records. Emotional dissonance lingers even in moments of affection. The bond begins to feel like walking on eggshells, fragile, tense, almost doomed to collapse under its own weight. Dreams become strange, accidents happen more frequently, and symbolic losses of jobs, friendships, or peace start to pile up. These are not coincidences. They are the unconscious breaking through the surface, desperate to be seen. To deny these signs is to remain trapped in an endless loop. But to embrace them, to truly see them, is to take the first step toward freedom. Integration begins when we stop blaming the other and start owning what has always been within us. What we judge or resent in our partner may be the very thing we've disowned in ourselves. If you find yourself consumed by anger, jealousy, dependence, or fear in a relationship, it doesn't mean the other person is the villain of your story. It means they've activated something raw, a wound, a memory, a vulnerability that's been waiting to rise. The task is not to change them. The task is to become conscious of your own reaction, to sit with your discomfort and ask, where does this come from? What part of me is hurting? Relationships that devolve into shadow projection become battlegrounds. Communication breaks down. Defensiveness takes over. Love morphs into conflict. And suddenly, it feels like some unseen force is trying to tear you apart. That force, Jung would say, is real. It is the call to individuation, the soul's journey back to itself. And sometimes, the only way to answer that call is by ending the relationship. But this is not failure, this is courage. The courage to admit that this person's role in your life may have been to awaken a truth, not to stay forever, but to spark transformation. Letting them go, as heartbreaking as it is, opens space for a love that is not built on projection or pain, but on mutual wholeness and deeper understanding. A love that includes the shadow, not denies it. a love that grows in the light of self-awareness. When we resist the signs, the universe doesn't give up. It intensifies them. Synchronicities begin to appear, meaningful coincidences without clear cause, yet filled with symbolic weight. You contemplate leaving, and a song plays about letting go. You try to reconcile, and life throws obstacles in your path. These events are not random. They're the language of the soul, urging you toward alignment. Sometimes the signs aren't external at all. They live in your body. An inexplicable tightness in the chest, a growing unease even in happy moments, a heaviness that refuses to lift. Other times, they arrive from the outside, repeated patterns, the same arguments, the same disappointments, over and over, until you realize you're in a loop. Jung believed the unconscious strives for balance. When we stray too far from who we truly are, the unconscious erupts. It speaks through dreams, through emotion, through crisis, all to return us to wholeness. That's why breakups, even painful ones, are often sacred thresholds. They feel like endings, but they are openings. They are portals. When the universe separates two people, even when love still lingers, it is never out of cruelty. It is because the version of that bond has fulfilled its purpose. To insist on staying in something that no longer nurtures you is a form of self-abandonment. And the universe, loyal to your individuation, will not allow you to remain where your soul cannot thrive. So pay attention. When love begins to feel like drowning, when everything around you begins to decay, your energy, your dreams, your joy, you may not be in a space of healing, but in a space of disintegration. And the task is no longer to fight for the relationship, but to listen to what the universe is trying to say. Synchronicities are not just curious events. They are sacred symbols. They ask us to be brave, to surrender our fantasy of how love should be, and to accept what love is, a force that seeks truth, growth, and liberation. Some stay in misaligned relationships out of fear of being alone, of starting over, of not finding someone better. But the soul is not fooled. It knows when it is being silenced. And when the soul suffers, the universe will intervene, not to punish, but to liberate. A relationship that no longer supports your becoming is not a home. It is a lesson. And that lesson, once learned, will lead you to something deeper: boundaries, self-respect, clarity, and the kind of love that does not ask you to shrink in order to stay. Learning to read the signs, to interpret life symbolically, is a spiritual discipline. When we stop demanding permanence from every connection and begin to ask what each encounter is here to teach us, we start living consciously. We stop clinging. We begin to trust the flow. Not all relationships are meant to last, but every one of them, especially the most painful, contains a seed of transformation. And when we honor that, we return to ourselves, not broken, but reborn. In the end, the universe doesn't tear people apart. It guides them back to their truth. And few acts require more bravery than choosing yourself in the ruins of a love that once felt like destiny. We are often challenged to let go of the patterns, masks, and attachments that quietly distance us from the essence of who we truly are. This inner calling is rarely comfortable, and it often brings us face to face with one of life's most painful realizations: that someone we once loved deeply, someone who once felt like home, no longer resonates with the evolving truth of our being. Letting go, contrary to what many believe, is not the death of love. It is the birth of maturity. It is the understanding that not all love was meant to be eternal. Some love exists to ignite transformation, not permanence. To individuate, in the Jungian sense, is to step into the fullness of who you are. It is the sacred and often painful process of integrating every aspect of the psyche, the light and the shadow, the masculine and the feminine, the instinctual and the rational. It means allowing life to express itself through your most unfiltered, unmasked and genuine self. But becoming whole demands rupture. It requires a radical honesty, the kind of honesty that makes you look into the mirror without flinching. It calls you to see where your life is still being shaped by the expectations of others, by emotional neediness, or by illusions of completion found in someone else's arms. When we cling to relationships that no longer nourish our soul, out of fear, habit, or guilt, we betray the very path that is meant to set us free. And the universe, ever committed to our authenticity, begins to intervene, not as punishment, but as redirection. It nudges us, sometimes through discomfort, sometimes through suffering, towards the truth we've been avoiding. Detachment is not the same as forgetting. It doesn't mean erasing memories or pretending love didn't exist. It means honoring what once was, holding gratitude for what was shared and learned, and still recognizing that the healthiest step forward is often the one that leads us away. Individuation is a solitary path, not in the sense of being alone, but in the sense of returning to the center. Choosing yourself is not an act of rejection, it is the completion of a cycle. It marks the end of projections, of dependency, of unconscious repetition of emotional patterns. Many of us feel guilty for leaving someone behind, especially when affection remains and the relationship hasn't been completely corroded by conflict. But that guilt is not a reflection of truth. It is a product of a culture that taught us love must mean endurance at all costs. Jung, however, reveals a different understanding. He shows us that love, in its most sacred form, does not imprison. It liberates. True love allows both souls to expand. And when love begins to contract your spirit, when it starts to weigh heavier than it lifts, something vital has fallen out of balance. And healing, restoration, wholeness, they always begin from within. Choosing yourself is not an act of selfishness. It is an act of revolution. It is the quiet, powerful statement that your life has meaning, not because of who walks beside you, but because of who you are when you walk alone. It means understanding that your journey cannot be postponed to soothe someone else's fear of abandonment. It means believing deep in your bones that when you align with your truth, the universe responds, not with punishment, but with new beginnings, new, more aligned relationships, more conscious love, more honest connection. But the new can only arrive when there is space, and space only opens when we release what no longer belongs. There is a sacred force, an archetypal wisdom in the act of letting go. It is the essence of the hero's journey, the shedding of every mask, every attachment, every illusion that prevents growth. In the silence that follows departure, something profound can finally emerge, the possibility of true reconnection with the self. It is in that stillness that we find the home we were always seeking in others, a home that, in truth, has always lived inside of us. Sometimes, to answer the call of the soul, we must release the hands that once held us, the words that once comforted us, the eyes that once felt like shelter. Not because those moments weren't real, they were, but because their time has passed, and the soul knows. When a relationship stops reflecting your essence and becomes a burden upon it, the universe speaks. And when you answer with courage, the universe does not punish, it opens, it frees. Not all encounters were meant to last forever. Some were sent to awaken us, to unearth something long buried, to shake us into awareness. And once that awakening takes place, the purpose of the bond may have been fulfilled. As Jungian psychology teaches us, love is not about dissolving into another. It is about discovering more of who you are through the mirror of connection. And when that mirror starts to distort your truth, when it becomes a prison rather than a portal, the soul suffers. And the universe, in its infinite compassion, will intervene. It will pull you away from anything that pulls you away from yourself. So if you're in the midst of such a moment, if you feel that quiet ache, that gentle pull, that whisper that something is no longer aligned. Know this, your journey matters, your truth matters, and the love that begins within is the only love that will ever truly overflow. Letting go is not the end, it is the beginning.